Have you ever wondered why bolt-action sniper rifles are the most accurate, even more than gas-operated semi-automatics? Well, I've seen a lot of articles and videos about this, and they tend to be very reductionist on this topic. You probably have some answers in mind to this question, like what is it? Is it because the bolt-action rifle doesn't have as many moving parts as gas-operated ones? But actually, the idea that the bolt-action rifle is more accurate than the semi-automatic is completely false. It goes way beyond that. So, what kind of rifle is the most accurate? The semi-automatic or the bolt-action? Why does everyone rule out semi-automatic rifles? Is it true that semi-automatic rifles are less reliable? And what kind of rifle do snipers prefer? Today we'll answer all these questions, and we'll do it in a very scientific way. So make yourself comfortable. And welcome to Guns Club. First, we need to understand the basic differences between both types of weapons. Bolt-action rifles use a simple mechanism operated by the user's hand to eject each shell and load a new cartridge. This method greatly limits the rifle's rate of fire, but snipers in particular don't need a high rate of fire due to the nature of their work. On the other hand, semi-automatic rifles use a mechanism powered by the gases from the shot, which push a piston. This moves the bolt backward, ejects the spent casing, and then loads a new cartridge, ready to fire in the chamber. Both systems are extremely accurate and can be used to shoot targets at kilometers away. However, it's undeniable that one is more accurate than the other. Bolt-action rifles are more accurate for many reasons. To begin with, we have the most obvious reason. The more moving parts a rifle has, the greater the margin of error will be. In bolt-action rifles, the bolt is fixed, anchored in place when firing. This makes the weapon similar to firing a cannon. In semi-automatic rifles, the bolt is movable, and even if it doesn't move during the shot, since it's not fixed, it will tend to vibrate and move partially during each round. Additionally, part of the gases from the shot are used to operate the weapon, affecting accuracy. This is completely true and definitely not a myth. Bolt-action sniper rifles are more accurate than semi-automatics. However, this does not apply to all rifles. Certainly, we can notice this difference in rifles not specifically designed for precision shooting, such as designated marksman rifles, which belong to a family of infantry weapons. These usually don't have many changes compared to their infantry version. Normally, only a telescopic sight and a longer barrel are added. We have many examples of this type of weapon, such as the Stoner 25. But what if you design a rifle from scratch for long-distance shooting and you're asked to make it semi-automatic? You simply work to make this difference in accuracy non-existent, or even reverse it so that your semi-automatic weapon is much more accurate than bolt-action ones. We'll talk about this type of weapon later on because, in fact, they do exist. But first we need to talk about another negative factor in gas-operated semi-automatic weapons. Let's take a close look at how these systems work. During each shot, the gas system collects the gases from the barrel itself, near the muzzle. And here we already have a problem. Diverting part of the gases that propel the projectile obviously partially affects its thrust, and also having cavities in the barrel partially affects accuracy as well. Then the gases push a piston that in turn pushes the bolt backward to eject the casing and load a new cartridge, ready to fire. Here we have another problem. Depending on the system, the bolt of a gas rifle, like an Armalite rifle 15, can start unlocking long before the projectile has left the barrel. For example, in direct impingement rifles, like the Armalite rifle 15, or in rifles with overgassing or a light buffer. Those last two values mentioned are adjustable, but their misconfiguration can be imperceptible. Of course, these factors affect the accuracy of a rifle. Now, it's impossible for a shooter with a bolt-action rifle to operate the bolt of their weapon fast enough for this phenomenon to occur. That's why the bolt-action rifle is more accurate. One last factor that affects the accuracy of these rifles is the action of the hammer itself when firing. Bolt-action rifles work like a striker-fired weapon. The trigger acts directly to release the striker. The mechanism means that the main movement is the striker moving in line with the barrel. On the other hand, in semi-automatic rifles, the mechanism is, of course, more complex. With rotation and more movement, the hammer strikes the firing pin and also stops very abruptly. It's another source of movement, resulting in a slight inaccuracy. All these factors are imperceptible at medium and short distances, so they're not a problem in rifles intended for infantry, but at longer distances they become more noticeable. All these factors we've discussed today are not present in bolt-action rifles, because literally they're just a rifled barrel and nothing more. Does this mean that bolt-action sniper rifles are more accurate than semi-automatics? Clearly not, or at least not entirely. At ranges under 1,000 meters, the mentioned effects are barely noticeable, especially in semi-automatic rifles specifically designed to be sniper rifles. You'd have to be quite an expert to notice these variations. As an example, we could talk about the singular value decomposition. Dragunov uses a long-stroke gas piston system, similar to those of the Kalashnikovs, which obviously makes it a semi-automatic rifle. It's clearly one of the best rifles in history, and its accuracy is very, very good. However, beyond 1,000 meters, the previously mentioned negative effects can affect its accuracy, making it partially ineffective at such a distance. To be a semi-automatic precision rifle that shoots at distances greater than 1,000 meters, the problems of gas systems must be mitigated with mechanical solutions. Let's take the Barrett M82 as an example. It's an extremely famous rifle because of its great accuracy and power. Although it's not exactly a sniper rifle, it's designed for precision shooting. It has an effective range of 1,800 meters, according to its 50 caliber ammunition. To achieve its great precision, a lot of mechanical improvements had to be made to the conventional gas-operated sniper rifle design. Well, actually, they didn't use a gas system, but instead made it with a simple recoil system. When fired, the bolt moves back from the force of the shot's explosion, exactly 25 millimeters. This way, it ejects the casing and loads a new cartridge into the barrel. Its design ensures that the barrel remains sealed by the time the projectile leaves the muzzle. This way, you can emulate the design of a bolt-action rifle in a semi-automatic weapon. Let's also take a look at how it operates. The firing pin is linear with very few movements. This way, all the negative effects of a semi-automatic system were mitigated. After the creation of the M82, Barrett decided to make bolt-action versions to be more acceptable to the United States Army. But even the bolt-action versions from Barrett were beaten in Army competitions by the M82, the semi-automatic, which was much better than its bolt-action versions. The M82 was used to make the third longest distance kill in history at 2,815 meters. It was made by an Australian soldier in Afghanistan, and the eighth longest distance kill was also made at 2,300 meters. And also many more in this ranking, as you can see if it's well designed. A semi-automatic rifle doesn't necessarily have to be less accurate than a bolt-action one. Certainly, when making sniper rifles, manufacturers choose to make them bolt-action to avoid complicating development or making the final design more expensive. But even so, semi-automatic rifles are still very accurate if they are well designed and manufactured. There's also a widespread myth that most people believe, which is that snipers don't use semi-automatic rifles because they're less reliable compared to a bolt-action rifle. And while those who say this have a point, a bolt-action rifle is certainly harder to jam and easier to clean. It has fewer moving parts that could fail. But sniper rifles very rarely jam because they're not fired as much as a standard rifle. They're partially sealed, so if they're not fired, too much dirt shouldn't get in. This is a consideration that's not taken into account as much when choosing a rifle, taking into account everything we've said. When it's your turn to choose a sniper rifle, don't worry too much about whether it's bolt-action or semi-automatic. Think about the manufacturer and its effective range, more than whether it's bolt-action or semi-automatic. If you found this video interesting, maybe you'd like to watch Why Don't Snipers Aim for Their Targets' Heads? Thank you very much for watching this video, and goodbye.